idea come? I mean, I'm sure there were things brewing, and I'd like to know about what was brewing.
Mm-hmm.
But was that one moment where you said, hey, we should do this, and what was the end of that sentence?
We probably have to mention Northern Plains Resource Council first, because that group, which was founded in 72, they say, 71 I say, because I wrote them a check in 71, but anyway, is a alliance between people on the land, ranchers and farmers, and then conservationists. And it's one of those alliances that's not supposed to work, but it's been working ever since the early 70s.
And they were fighting coal mining in the Bull Mountains, which is the hills between where we live in Roundup and Billings.
And other rancher and farmer groups around that were being challenged in the same way. There was a coal industry, and government document called the North Central Power Study, which came out, which basically said, we're going to mine all this, low sulfur subbituminous coal, and set up a bunch of power plants, and we're going to be, and they actually designated Montana and eastern Montana and northeastern Wyoming as a national sacrifice area. They used
it
that
actually
in the document.
said that in the official report,
Yeah.
national sacrifice area.
At any rate, the coal
So-
people came around. Okay,
Yeah,
the
go
coal
ahead.
people came around to the ranchers and said, "Well, your neighbor down the road is. This has happened in the Bull Mountains. Your neighbor down the road has already said okay, so
So you're going to be here totally surrounded by coal if you
Right.
don't sell out.
And so the ranchers in the Bull Mountains started phoning each other, and they found out that not everybody had agreed to lease their, almost none of the ranchers in the whole area, eastern Montana, own the mineral rights, right? They own the surface rights. So, at any rate, a group of ranchers coalesced into the Bull Mountain Landowners Association, and Elizabeth and I were friends with some of those people, and
So we started working with
Go ahead.
Bull Mountain, and then Northern Plains
And then
formed,
Northern Plains formed,
which was other people fighting the coal mines around eastern Montana and northern Wyoming.
similar groups of ranchers and farmers, mostly ranchers at the time, but farmers later, and coalesced into Northern Plains Resource Council. And one of the founders of Northern Plains was Ann Charter, who was a Bull Mountain rancher, and Ann started coming to our house a little bit, and because she was interested in alternative forms of energy, and we were too, and so we started having discussions around our dining room table in Roundup, Montana, and that kind of brought on the idea that Northern Plains should sponsor a Montana Alternative Energy Conference.
Well, part of that came from, though, the fact that Kai Cochran, who was from the East Coast, her aunt had a ranch down
In the Tongue River
in the
country.
Tongue River area, so her aunt was part of this fighting coal, and she had come out from the east, and she worked as a person who worked at Northern Plains, and she didn't like the fact that all the time she was saying no to coal. So she started researching what other possibilities
Well,
there were.
she sort of joined us in this, Ann Charter and Elizabeth and I and some other people.
Yes,
in
but
this.
she was in the office
I know,
and getting
yeah.
phone calls from people all around the country
Right.
saying, well, what is this about? What can you do with renewable energy? And
So anyway, the idea was Ann and Elizabeth and I and Kai said, we'd like to say yes to something rather than just no to something, right? So we put together this energy conference in May of 1974, and it was an astonishing success. It not only drew people from around Montana, but people from all around the country.
Because nobody else had done it.
Nobody had ever done a renewable energy conference before, right?
And people were just really hungry.
And what year was this?
74.
Okay.
And the thing is so when was the
It was in May of 74.
when was the
What?
the gas spikes and the
Well, that was part of it. The OPEC,
OPEC shut down.
decided
so suddenly we were totally dependent on foreign countries on whether or not we would have oil, gas in our cars.
from 36 cent a gallon gas, we went to $100 and $1.50, and so I mean that was a big shock for everybody. And that was part of it. So we put together this conference, and as I said, it drew people from all over the country, actually, not just Montana. It was co-sponsored by Northern Plains and also the Montana Committee for the Humanities, one of these humanities councils. And the humanities part of it meant that we had to have humanists in to talk about, and it just kind of expanded the whole notion beyond just sort of techies kind of stuff, And so that conference was such a roaring success that 9 of us who had attended that conference met again I guess there were 7 of us. Two were absent, but they were there sort of by telephone and stuff, decided to in Billings, yeah. And we met in the house of a house that was occupied by some of the young staffers of Northern Plains. Many of them sons and daughters of ranchers. And a lot of them from environmental programs in colleges in different places, Michigan and California and stuff. And
Chicago. Jeannie
yeah,
came from Chicago.
Yeah. And we met and decided that we needed to form AERO, right?
We needed to form an organization that would promote renewable energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And say yes to something, not just no to coal or no to Northern Plains since has gotten into a lot of other things based on their memberships, challenges that they faced, different mining things and stuff like that. Anyway, so we 9 of us founded it. Do you need the names? Is that good for the?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Okay. Well, Kai Cochran, Ann Charter, Elizabeth Wood, Wilbur Wood, John Brown, who was a organic wheat farmer in Circle. He was another person there. There were 2 people who were interested in methane, like methane, not from fossil fuels, but from chicken shit and stuff like that, right? George Oberst and Al Rutan, and a couple of people from Billings itself who had kind of helped organize that conference. One was a kind of media guy named Ken Taylor, and another was he was actually worked for the Chamber of Commerce, and his name was Terry Madison. And now, did I name all 9 people? I might have. I think I did, yeah, I think I got all 9. So George and Al weren't present there, but they were there by telephone, and so those 9 were the
Sitting on the front porch.
Yeah, of the a 2-story house in downtown Billings that the occupants who were staffers for Northern Plains called Bozoville, or Bozovilla. So we sat at Bozovilla and founded AERO. Kai became immediately kind of the executive director because she was in the Northern Plains
office. She had an
office
with telephones.
Yeah,
and copy machines.
And she already was networking with renewable energy
People
enthusiasts,
across
wind
the
power,
country.
solar, around the country. So she just continued that, and eventually, left. We got AERO got a couple of early grants from a nonprofit family group in Virginia, actually, which had been the person who was kind of in charge of that had met Kai, I think, on an airplane.
She was
trip.
flying back from the East Coast and started chatting.
And so
she was all enthusiastic, of course, what she was doing, and this guy turned out to have money to give away, and
he gave us
they funded us for like 3 or 4 years.
They just gave us, over a period of 2 years, they gave us, I'm trying to think of the exact figure, I think it was something like $70,000,
Yeah,
which
was
at
a
that
lot of
time was a
money
lot of
for,
money.
you
And
know,
we had a lot of people.
we were just us.
A lot of people immediately joined AERO. And a lot of them were ranchers and farmers, and some just kind of, enthusiasts of various kinds. And so that we started out doing a lot of networking, largely done by Kai out of the Northern Plains Resource Council office, but. And what we decided to do as a board, the 9 of us were the board, was to start doing hands-on workshops. So we started doing hands-on workshops in a variety of things. I think methane was one, but wind power was another one. Montana had actually a long history of working with wind power, the rural areas in Montana. So that was kind of in the background of a lot of people's minds. Solar at the time was largely, solar heating of space or water. Solar electricity was way too expensive at that time, and so
we didn't even talk about it when we
not
were
much.
It
was doable, but
trom walls,
it was
which was you'd heat water on the outside of your
so a lot of the
greenhouse, and so that it would radiate in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
It was largely solar was architectural applications, largely, and at that time.
Although we did have at the New Western Energy Show, we did bake cookies.
We did. Oh yeah, solar oven. Yeah. Anyway, so AERO started doing these workshops, and they too attracted people from all over the country. We had a wind power workshop in November of 1975 in Billings, and I think they were making some wind power blades and stuff, and a bunch of people would come to these workshops and pay money and stuff. And a person named Greg Jacobs from Indiana came out, and he to one workshop that he'd heard about, and Elizabeth and I had decided that AERO couldn't get any traction in the mainstream media.
We were just cute.
It was sort of like
renewal. It's cute.
Yeah,
in the 70s,
solar energy.
It was just
that's fine. Pat,
that's very nice.
Yeah.
What nice children
maybe
you
sometime
are.
in the future, so we decided that we would combine our own kind of interests in renewable energy, but also in the arts,
guerrilla theater,
and put together a traveling renewable energy show for Montana. And Greg Jacobs, we were talking, and Greg said, "Are you serious about this?" Because Greg, as it happened, wanted to put educational things on railroads.
He wanted railroad cars filled with, like, each car to have a different agenda, science or astronomy, or so he was really interested in traveling education.
Right.
So
he said, traveling education. Well, it isn't a railroad, but maybe, So he said, okay, if you're in. So we
Do you
said-
really want to do this?
we sat down with Kai and Elizabeth and I. We sat down with Greg Jacobs and said, well, yeah, we are interested. So we said, okay, I'm going to come out in January, and we'll talk about it and work it out. So he did. He came to our home in Roundup, Montana in January. We sat around our dining room table and
We
concocted
told him
this
what
idea.
we told him what we thought would work.
would work.
We needed a theater stage because we needed to have theater because that's what people like, a story. You got to tell them a story.
We had to carry all these exhibits around.
But we also
and
wanted the
the
physical,
technology, yeah.
the wind generator and our little cookie oven and
So
insulation and I mean, there's actually some videos out about the New Western.
yeah,
So like what stories would you tell?
you mean in the traveling show?
Mhm.
Well, let me finish about how we got it
Okay.
set up. So Greg, we talked it all out and laid out a timeline. Kai would continue to do her work in the AERO office. Elizabeth and I were going to be co-directors of this show and recruit 12 or 13 people who were willing to give up their summer and get
Travel around Montana and do this.
And it had to be both.
$60 for the summer.
No, they finally got more than that. But anyway, it was.
But we paid for their food and they got to
and we
sleep in
camped
sleeping
out.
bags.
Yeah. Anyway, so this was 1976.
Six.
So there were still a lot of people who were willing to and free enough to kind of do that sort of thing. So we did a number of things. We laid out a format for a map for where we were going to go, how many places we were going to go to.
And one of the
that.
things we decided was that since in the summer in Montana, the big cities got the entertainment that came through, especially in the 70s. So we thought, well, we'll go to all the little cities next to the big cities because then we'll have a better chance of getting an audience. We won't be competing.
Anyway,
So we
So
started in
so
Roundup.
that was the
Yeah.
notion because we'd seen how in Roundup, like a circus would come to town.
Everybody would go.
Yeah. Or they'd do their rodeo and they would return through that sort of thing. But so we had a time frame of having to recruit people to both technical people and like theater people, right? And there was some crossover too, and
In January, and they had to be in Roundup by May.
well, they were actually had to be in Roundup by the 1st of June.
Well,
And because we were going to take a month to set this up, put the whole thing together. Greg Jacobs went back to Indiana and built a trailer, which would hold all the exhibits and
then the
the
side would come
technology,
down
and then
become
one
the
side open up
stage.
and become the stage. So we would go in, we'd go into a town, and we'd set up for 3 days, and we'd set up our circle of exhibits, and then the wall of would crank down and would be the stage, right? So but both of us knew certain people who to either recruit directly or
talk to about
talk to
like we needed a director,
or we need
right? But, I mean, Wilbur and I couldn't. We were putting it together. We couldn't do these other jobs. You had to trust other people.
yeah.
So we got a woman who was professional director from Washington who heard.
Who was a friend of
who
one of the
would-
people who
people-
joined us, right?
I mean, it was just totally
And-
word of mouth.
And one of our friends, Scott Crichton, who was a musician that we knew, was down in San Francisco for a while at Blue Bear Dancing School of Music. Anyway, whatever. He was taking some music education, and a woman who was there with him. I said, Scott.
Angie said, "Oh, that sounds like fun."
So she came. So I mean, a lot of people came with other people, but we had to get, we got a technical director right away, Jim Berg, who's still with AERO. He's kind of the energy task
Coordinator right
force
now, yeah.
task force director, and you know, it came together in a very organic way, the last person that we got was we needed a
frontman.
a barker.
Oh no, that's right.
A barker for this medicine show kind of, you know, that we put together.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
And so Annie Gard decided. Do you know who Annie Gard is? She does the Pea Green Boat, which is a KUFM.
UFM. She does the children's show.
She wasn't doing that at the time, but she came aboard, you know, and she was a perfect barker. Yeah, you know.
She started selling, you know, this wonderful.
Well, she'd come out and say, you know,
and of course there was
this is the greatest show on earth. There's going to show, you know.
It was really just goofy.
Yeah.
But we did tell a story of two. We had like the three little pigs.
Well, we gathered these people together in June, and Elizabeth and I had some ideas about some scripts and things like that, but we counted on the folks coming and just like
making it
happen.
We had a children's show in the afternoon and an evening show.
Yeah, and there was some crossover between the shows for each, but
the three little pigs built their houses different ways, and you know,
right.
Some were susceptible to the wolf, and others were not.
And we had a number of, well, they were all original skits, you know, and then we had this circle of exhibits, which the technical people could talk about, you know, and talk about passive solar construction and stuff like that, you know. So
you know.
Yeah. So that was and it came together. I grew up in Roundup, and so I sort of had some local contacts, and the county commissioners let us use the fairgrounds and the buildings on there to put the show together. They said, yeah, just pay for the water and electricity, and then I think they didn't even end up charging us for
you
that.
know, because we put on the show in Roundup, and they said,
The mayor of town, who had a building that had been a hospital originally, just up the street from our house, but then became a rest house,
and had all these,
right?
And it was closed.
It was closed.
He said, yeah, just pay the lights and electricity, and
your crew can stay there for that month. So
he didn't charge us either.
No, he ended up not. Yeah, so things were.
We bought a bus.
Well, we had to buy a lot, actually.
Yeah, we bought a bus, bought a truck.
Well, we had to buy. Trailer. Well, we had the trailer, and Greg Jacobs had hauled the trailer out from Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and barely made it because the trailer was kind of heavy and his pickup was not that strong.
Yeah.
So we had to buy a grain truck. A truck that would haul it. So it ended up being.
Well, and it had that was where the tower for the wind generator was sticking out of the grain truck.
So when did you finally?
So we got it together. We got it together in the
June.
And Angela Frun and Scott Crichton came a little bit early. They were able to come a little bit early, so I could work with them on music and stuff. But everybody showed up June 1st, basically. So we were going to go on the road after the 4th of July.
We were doing a show the 4th of July
in Roundup. Well,
and then we went to Circle up in the northeast corner.
Okay, yeah, and then so we had a month, a little bit more than a month, for all these people to get together and to do the information boards and then set up the winds and the various displays,
professional,
the methane barrel and stuff like that, and
order all the food
and to create the script, right?
Uh-huh.
And AERO had this backing that from these original grants we got. We were sort of paying our own way, so we had a little backup from that. And
but we put in a grant to, sort of backtracking, because Montana at that time had passed a law that a certain amount of money from the coal had to go to renewable energy.
That, by the way, came out of our
The energy
renewable energy conference.
Because we put Ann Charter next to
And the rancher, right?
a senator who we knew was sympathetic.
Oh, he was a rep at that time. But
Oh, okay, he was
later
a rep
became
at that
senator.
time.
But
And
anyway,
they were sitting down talking. And because renewable energy wasn't a threat, it was cute. It passed the legislature with nobody even
well, see,
blinking.
Ann said to Tom Tao, the legislator, you know, we need to have a demonstration program for renewable energy. He says that's a great idea. I'll bring it up in the next legislature. And
Passed,
it passed.
nobody blinked.
And so they took
So
some
we
of
knew we
they
had
took
the grant
some
money there in the state
They
if,
said-
if we'd get it.
they took some of the coal money, which was appropriate, the coal income from the state, and devoted a relatively small percentage, but it was significant for demonstration projects, right? And
So Kai applied for it
Well,
for us.
yeah, I mean that was, and the '76 was the first year that they were
Giving the money away.
Giving the money away. So we applied for it, but we didn't know if we were going to get it. Actually,
Well, but Kai had actually said she would figure out a way to cover it if we didn't get it.
So everybody's together, you
Yeah.
made all the things.
So then the first year we did the new Western Energy. So Elizabeth and I said we'll do this. Elizabeth and I said we'll do this for 1 year, and then if somebody else wants to direct it, then we'll turn it over to them.
We can organize it. We can get it going. We can try and get the money on it. But
What was the response from?
Well, we went the first year we went to did Roundup, you know, and did a show or just a couple of shows in Roundup, and then we went to Circle, which is up, you know, and kind of, you know where Circle is, right? It's kind of northeastern Montana.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of tried to get every bioregion of the state. So we went to Circle. And
during the rodeo.
And John Brown, who was one of the founders of AERO, was a wheat farmer there, so he kind of helped us set up. Oh, we had to have a front man too, right?
Yeah.
And so we had this front man going around, you know, ahead of us, sometimes quite a bit ahead of us, and setting up. Okay,
You know, getting
a park
space
to put it in, or something.
a place to put it in. And we also did demonstration projects. So we built a solar collector in every town that we were
Solar water
a
heater.
water heater in every town we were in, so that people would. So it wasn't there was evidence.
So the
that we had been
techies would do these solar
Yeah.
water heating workshops, yeah, in every town. But anyway, we would set up and do the show, and a lot of times we tried to coincide with the events that were happening in the town. So after Circle, you went up to Wolf Point, and they had the Wolf Point Stampede, which drew a lot of people.
So we tried, yeah.
And so that, you know, that was good. Came across the High Line to Havre, which was the largest town we went to by, you know, so far. And
Went to Shodo.
and you know, we were at, you know, and then we went down sort of through Great Falls, but we went to Shodo, right?
Okay.
Then we went up over the
To Big Fork.
to Big Fork,
Did a show
near
in-
Kalispell, but yeah.
And
Then we went down to Arlee, near Missoula. Then we went down to down the Bitterroot to
I can't remember.
come on, what's the town? Hamilton.
Okay.
Okay, Hamilton and the Bitterroot, which is the second largest town we've been to by that time. Then we went to Helena, actually.
That was our big town.
That was our first big town, you know, that we went to.
And you know,
And
we
we
just
were-
had these standing ovations.
Yeah.
I mean, as we went west, we got bigger and bigger audiences,
Yeah.
and we started getting groupies
We
who
did.
would show up at every place we were.
Yeah.
There was this. What was her name?
Scotty Prescott.
Scotty
Scotty Prescott.
She was probably in
She was
her,
I
She
don't
was
know.
a rancher. She was probably in her 60s, you know, and here we're in our 30s, you know, and but she just was,
most of them were in their 20s. We were in our
yeah,
30s,
we
but yeah.
were 10 years older. We're always 10 years older, and but just there were these people who kept showing up, and there was a guy who showed up in Shodo, who was a crop duster. And he got so fascinated with the wind generators that he put the first wind generators in Livingston, in Montana.
Well, first he went to school
He
and
had-
became a
oh,
doctor
that's
so he
right.
could
He
afford
said-
his wind power
he said,
habit.
I have to do something that earns money, so he became an anesthesiologist so
Right.
he could support his wind habit.
So he was actually from a ranch family in Billings, but anyway,
But we ran into him and showed up.
these people would show up and sort of like some of them would just sort of glom onto us, But Scotty Prescott, this rancher from
She was
outside
White
White
Sulphur,
Sulphur,
yeah.
quite a bit outside White Sulphur.
She's south of White
She
Sulphur.
kept popping up, in different, she was just lovely.
And
a
Ann
lovely person.
Wilsnack became a
Yeah.
groupie.
Yeah, and when we got to Helena, Anne said, "I want to come with you guys," and we knew that actually that Elizabeth at the end of the show would have to
I had a wedding.
had a family wedding to go
I
to,
had
right?
attend.
And so Anne joined us, and
The last show.
learned all the lines of everybody. So she was able to do Elizabeth's thing in the last show. Anyway, so I'll finish the itinerary the first year. It was after Helena, we went to Bozeman, which is the other large town we did that year. Then we went to we came down to Yellowstone and not Billings, but went to Red Lodge, and then went to Forsyth, which was near Colstrip, the power plant zone, and then we went to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation to Lame Deer, and we ended there. So I think I could count it up. I think it was 12.
Wait, the northern
places. The Northern Cheyenne were so sort of good about coal. I mean, good from our point of view about coal, that we thought we'd better just go there and sort of thank them for it. And that was very close to Kai's aunt's ranch on the Tongue River, where we, after our
journey.
after Lame Deer, we actually went and sort of
And got a phone call
yeah.
from the state that they were funding our project after it was over.
But
So
we
that was
spent
cool.
we
It was
bought
like
we bought
$60,000 they gave us.
We had to buy a bus to all the people, and then the techie guys put a bread box solar water heater on top, right?
We had hot showers and hot water.
Yeah, and we bought that from a rock and roll band in Missoula, the bus, and we had to buy a grain truck, and we had to kind of get a lot of other stuff together and feed everybody and buy gas, and we somehow managed to do this for $25,000 for almost 3 months, which
it was a long time ago.
which was it was a long time ago. And
So how many people were traveling with you in your group?
13.
13 actually. Yeah, we had some people that kind of started helping us, and then but the youngest person was a 16-year-old from Red Lodge who kind of just showed up and started helping us, and then petitioned. We said, "Okay, Bob, you're going to have to, write it. Why do you want to be on?"
Well, yeah, I mean, you're underage,
And so
you're going to be traveling with us all summer, and
so
he got
so-
permission from his
And then he ended
family.
up hanging out with the show for a long time after that. Two of the people, well, one of the people who was on the show with us, Robin Leanhouse, and then another friend of Robin's at the time, David Nimick, who he and Angie LaFron are together, right? But David and Robin,
They took it over the second
they
year.
took it over the second year.
It went for 9 years. It went from this huge traveling energy show down to, by the end, it was boxes being sent to schools
Energy
because the
boxes,
price
yeah.
of gas kept going.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they did reservation tours.
they
They
did-
did tours.
They
from,
did targeted tours.
they
Well,
did-
they did a second tour, again set up in Roundup, but a lot of it was already set up
Yeah.
in 1977. So the first one was 76. So they did a second statewide tour. Then it went to targeted
Went
tours.
to reservations, national parks. They went up.
Alberta,
they did
British
a-
Columbia,
yeah, they did the Canadian
California.
tour. And then
Yeah.
it got too expensive to take everybody and go, and so they started getting until
They
they
did
were
smaller
down. They
things
did
and
down
yeah.
to boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so just have one final question.
Mm-hmm.
So from the traveling show, people became interested, they became members.
Yeah.
And how did when did it become more structured or did it?
Well, it was.
I don't really
The
have a
show
sense
itself
of it.
was very professional.
Oh, yeah,
We had a
absolutely.
professional
Yeah.
director, and the techie people
Well,
were.
the thing
you know,
is,
they
Was
did.
there
But-
a shift between,
Well,
you were
I'll-
doing education, you were
Well,
teaching.
Yeah.
what one of the things that happened is that when Reagan was elected to the White House, he took the solar collectors that Jimmy Carter had put on the White House down, and money totally vanished for renewable energy
Pretty much.
from
Dried up.
everywhere. And so AERO, in order to survive, had to figure out where the need was. And since there was such a secure land base in most of the members who were in agriculture, so the energy shifted from renewable energies to renewable agriculture
Sustainable.
and
ag.
sustainable
Yeah.
food.
But but it's all member based. I mean, all this came up through the members, right? And that shift, which happened in the mid '80s, when money for renewables just dried up. That was put together by people like David Owen and just the the rural and farmer rancher members of AERO.
And we always had a board, and
Yeah.
I mean, I was the office manager for
Quite a while.
quite a while and did the books, and
Right.
and we had projects, so we had people who were in charge of different projects.
So the purpose of the traveling show was education, getting the word out.
It was
It was mostly just to make sure that people understood that renewable energy wasn't just cute.
Yeah.
that it actually worked. You know.
That
Yeah.
there was something
How
here.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and where you could go to get information.
Okay.
Yeah, but there was a great hunger in the
I mean,
state
we
and the
didn't have the
country.
internet. We didn't do this with smartphones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that hunger is still there or growing?
Well, I think people have access to much more information now than they did at that time. I mean, there was just it was very limited amount of information, and there were bodies that didn't want information out. I mean, it would hurt their bottom line.
Yeah. Well, you think it's still true. A lot of times when energy comes up in a newspaper, it's fossil fuel energy, and if it's in a place where there's nuclear power, I guess it's nuclear power too. But hey,
I mean, there was
renewables are making huge strides now,
Well-
and anyway,
Well,
that's kind of a later story. But at that time in the '70s, we just wanted to get the word out about the very practical ways that you could implement, energy efficiency,
in your own house without requiring other stuff.
So our chief tech director would a lot of times get be on camera, talking about passive solar construction and that kind of energy efficiency in housing and stuff. So that was all part of it. That transition that happened sort of toward sustainable ag and toward local foods, and was very organic in a sense. I mean, it just came out of our organization.
Wanted to stay members, and they needed, and we needed to be able to find money to be able to support what they wanted, and the money, there was some money in sustainable agriculture.
And the AERO members, and not just AERO people, but many AERO members are responsible for the movement by various colleges like MSU into kind
Local
of
foods.
and sustainable ag.
Right.
Yeah.
The University of Montana, a huge investment in local foods, you know. And that's, you know, Neva Hassanine, who was a later, you know, she wasn't part of AERO for a while, but she became a
Yeah,
part
well,
of AERO.
but she was
And,
a member of Northern Plains
yeah.
when she, and you know, when we first met her, and
And she went off and got herself
she
a
went-
PhD and came back and
and yeah, I mean it was, I mean it's
such
just
a great
grown.
Story. It's a
It- well-
really great story.
Yeah.
Well, and it keeps expanding,
Yeah.
which is the best. I mean, it was like this little idea that just keeps growing, and now, you know,
we spun out of San Francisco. We,
I'm
I
from
moved
the Bay
back,
Area.
and Elizabeth
from
was
the
from
Bay
the from the SF Bay Area.
So you knew Scott from there, and he
Well,
brought
I-
Angie, and
No.
we didn't.
This
we
was
didn't, we met
back
Scott when
back
he
in
was-
'71. We spun out of San Francisco, and we were both really interested in renewable energy because we realized
you
that
met each other in San Francisco.
we did.
Yes, we met.
We
We
did,
met in
yeah.
San Francisco. We met Scott when he was part of the Broke Down Palace project in Red
so-called
Lodge,
In Red Lodge, yeah.
Yeah. which
There
you
were
probably
bunch-
haven't heard about. But
Well,
that
there's
was,
it
it was a low
It's
income
always-
project in Red Lodge
Yeah.
in the early 70s.
early '70s. Yeah.
Which was working with, and you know, we were working with low-income people in Roundup through this
That's great.
crazy Democrat woman who wore high heels this high. You know, she's a rancher. She's going down these high heels.
We-
Yeah, one last thing to say.
Well,
This is-
Elizabeth and I just personally were, you know, we organic gardeners, you know, so we're interested in food too, you know, so we were, you know, supportive members of AERO and so on for, you know, this kind of the sustainable ag period, and which hasn't gone away, but at a certain point, Jim Barngrover and another guy named Tom Butts decided that we really should start getting back into energy.
Into renewables, yeah.
And Jonah Crosby was fully behind that. And so a group of us started meeting, and we brought things up to date by ending up publishing a blueprint for homegrown energy self-reliance called Repowering Montana. And we did that in 2007, kind of did a little update of it in 2008. And it's interesting now looking at how far beyond that we've come. We were arguing in that document, a group of us wrote the document. I sort of was generally in charge and put it together, but we had 9 authors. And we were arguing that Montana could handle all its electrical needs.
And fuel, not including truckers coming through or tourists, but the fuel that ranchers could handle their own fuel.
Well, biodiesel, growing biodiesel.
Because
But we could handle all our electrical needs with renewables.
With what we had.
If you count the dams as, you know, the hydroelectric dams as renewables. But, you know, and we made what I feel was a convincing argument to that. But one thing that has happened in the interim between 2008 and 10 years
18.
later is the amazingly low cost of solar electric. It has dropped so that it's fully competitive with the fossil fuels. Nuclear power is not even in a question because it's too damn expensive, among other things. And so, you know, that is, and wind power is very, very, you know, if you look at the array of sources of energy, the Northwestern Energy, coal is the most expensive. It's right out front. Wind power from Judith Gap is the cheapest, right? Because they got in early and at a low rate, and so that tells you something, you know. I mean, we're ready now to move into the renewable energy age. It's not some nice
cute thing in the
Cute
future.
thing in the future. It's
But I want to say something. I know that you don't need a lecture, but here's what I want to say. When ranches were run on by horses, you needed 40% of your land to feed the horses. Okay. With biodiesel, you can get by. What is it?
well, Bob Quinn is the person to talk to about this, but
He-
just 10%.
He says you
less
You
of
grow
your
oil seeds, and you can get by on 10% of your land.
running your tractors and your
Just,
trucks and stuff like
Which
that.
is, and he does that. He used to make biodiesel, but now he just runs straight oil seed. He starts his tractors up with diesel, right?
Either
then
biodiesel or
switches
petrodiesel.
tanks.
Yeah.
Switches tanks and does all his tractoring on just straight oil seed. Switches tanks, goes back to the diesel,
To clean it
biodiesel,
out.
to clean out the engine, and doesn't even bother making biodiesel anymore.
Yeah, Bob says.
And
well,
he
I
does
don't know.
it
I don't know
on
what he
10%.
says today, but I have to talk to him.
Well,
But
we haven't
he says
talked to him
he
for
says
5
that
years, so who knows?
he says that farmers really should grow their own fuel.
And we, well, of course, that was another study. We did another study on biodiesels, but